Hello there and welcome back to Field Study, an exploration of food and the landscape. Today I'm here in this beautiful clifftop meadow and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the edible species that are good to eat in our grasslands right now. Stay tuned. Oh my word, it has turned to summer overnight. It's absolutely beautiful. All of the ash trees are starting to get their first leaves on and the sea is a beautiful crystal clear blue, almost tempting to swim in it, but I know it's probably going to be freezing cold. So yeah, we're here up on the edge of the cliff in this beautiful patch of meadow which is run by Natural England, which over the winter months they cleared of lots of the trees that were on the edge, some of the ones that were a little bit sick and dying. I thought it might be interesting to see some of the species that have started to colonize already, especially where they had the fires in order to clear the scrub, and there's plants poking through the ash already, and it's only 2 months after they burnt it. And I'm also going to be introducing you to some of the edible species that are available and prolific in our grasslands at the moment. Now I'm here in this beautiful meadow on the edge of the cliff because I'm a very lucky boy, but lots of these plants you'll find on the edges of parks, you'll find them on canal sides, riverbanks, you'll find them on any grassy sort of roadside verge as well, because roadside verges are one of our largest grassland habitats in this sort of anthropocentric age that we live in. So where we are here right on the edge of the cliff is quite an important habitat. So lots of migratory insect species as well as bird species travel over from continental Europe, which is just beyond the curved blade of the horizon over there, and this is one of the first places that they will make landfall. And Natural England, who own this bit of land here, are doing some work for butterfly conservation currently, and they have cleared this of all of the scrub that was here. So here were like some young scrubby ash trees, lots and lots of brambles, and it was just huge hedges and things. So I think they're trying to extend this, which is usually a beautiful meadow during the summer, and extend it a little bit further down here, more food plants for butterflies, etc. But as you can see, it's left lots and lots of bare earth. Now underneath us here, underneath a very thin layer of topsoil, is some sheer limestone cliffs. If you see down there, that's the tops of houses. I am about 60 foot up on top of some limestone cliffs here. So left over from the conservation work are these patches of scorched earth where lots of the limbs of the trees and stuff were burnt. There were huge fires. You could see them from miles around, great plumes of smoke. And this is what's left, bare patches of ash and burnt bits of wood. So what's interesting from a botanical point of view is the species that start to colonize it first. Now underneath here would have been subjected to some pretty high heat, but already about 2 months on you have this. Here where the fire was, and underneath here was all alight as well. You can see all of the ash and debris underneath. We have things like yarrow. This is a very interesting plant. It's a healing plant. It's used to make poultices and stuff for wounds and can heal wounds. In fact, it used to be chewed up and actually put inside lacerations on the battlefield. It's got antibacterial, antimicrobial properties, and it is also a styptic, which means it sort of shrinks tissue in order to stem and stop bleeding. So this is a very interesting medicinal plant to know. And you can see that it's growing all in here as well. Loads and loads of young yarrow plants. So we've got a dock species here, probably curly dock. So another food plant for human beings. We've got nettles poking up through the ash itself there. Look at that. Life finds a way. We've got more nettles on the edge. More dock, more everything. We've got brambles, again an overlooked food plant for human beings, more brambles coming up there, and all of this was completely down to bare earth. In fact, it looks so stark. Fuck. Chased by a bee. Did you know that bees can actually fly at 30 miles an hour, so you can never really outrun them. So don't even know why I tried. Anyway, back to the plants. It wasn't a bee. It was a species of wasp. Anyone out there that knows anything about wasp species, can you tell me what kind of wasp that is? Fascinating. Here we've got bracken ferns coming up through. We've got young burdock plants there as well. So what's interesting about sites like this, where you start to look at what plants are colonising disturbed earth, it's amazing how many of them are useful to human beings as a species. So if you look at them, it's about 75 to 80% of the species here that have started to grow on the scorched earth or even the bare earth that's been raked over. Lots and lots of them have got either edible uses, medicinal uses, and other uses as well. And this is absolutely no coincidence. So human beings are a cornerstone species. So wherever we cut down trees and cleared things for agriculture, wherever we set light to things to clear spaces in the forest, or or just disturb the earth by walking through it, we created habitat for these species. And these are species that we evolved alongside. They follow us all the way around the planet, especially nettles and plantain and stuff like that. They occur in lots of the places that human beings have colonised, and they tend to follow us around. And that should be paid attention to. Just as deer and rabbits and moths and everything have their food plant, these are ours. And they are damage adapted plants that appear wherever we make our nests, and habitat or civilization is another word you could term it. So yeah, these things follow us around, and it's amazing to see how quickly they can colonize a bit of bare earth or disturbed earth whenever we make it. Now, all along the edge here is a patch of scrubby ground, which is reminiscent of lots of patches in parks or whatever. So you'll find it up against sort of big trees or in semi-shade or at the edges of woodlands. You will find patches of earth like this that have similar species growing on it. Now, it won't be a surprise to any of you that lots of these species are edible or useful in some way. So let's take a look over this sea of green and see what we can identify that might be good to take home and eat. Now, automatically I am drawn to one of the most substantial plants here, and that is hogweed. You've got to be careful not to get stung. So this is common hogweed, and I did an identification video on this a few weeks back because I found some giant hogweed. This is common hogweed. So if you aren't sure on the difference between them or how to identify common hogweed, then I will put the link up in the top corner, and click on that and have a look at that before going out and foraging it. But this will be up to about here, sort of 5 or 6 foot, a little bit later on in the season, with beautiful white umbels of flowers. It's that sort of roadside cow parsley, beautiful plant, and it is amazing from an edibility point of view. It is substantial, all the parts of it are edible, and it has a delicious flavour, which is always helpful. You don't really need to do much to it, you just need to cook it and put some salt, olive oil or butter. So then over here next to it is this beautiful flower that's coming out at the moment, one of the first signs of summer for me. So this is campion, or red campion. So this is a plant which is deliberated about when it comes to its edibility. Some people say you can't eat it, but traditionally it is eaten. So this is me saying do some research before going and eating this plant. There are some modern scientific sources that say that it shouldn't be eaten. And I think it's because it has a slight saponin content. So it is a close cousin of a plant called soapwort, and soapwort, as you can probably tell by the name, is used to make soap because it's got a high saponin content. So yes. So, but this is red campion, and this plant is used in Italy, in northern Italy, to make a food called pistic, which is sort of like a early season, sort of spring, summer soup, stew sort of thing, I believe. I've never made it before, but yes, it's one of them things that you read a lot about in books. So this is used to make something called pistic. Pistic. All right, moving swiftly on to this big old fella here. So this rather huge looking plant here that lots of you will recognize from the sides of roads and things is burdock. And you see them beautiful little leaves about to come up there. So burdock is an excellent plant from an edibility point of view. Lots of you will probably have heard of dandelion and burdock, the drink, which is made from the root of this plant. However, when this grows up into a tall plant and has its little flowering stalks with its beautiful purple thistle-like flowers on, you can actually peel them and blanch them and use them as a green vegetable, and they are delicious. But the main thing that I use this for is to make cordage, and I'm definitely going to do some videos on that a little bit later on in the season. I know it may sound a little bit weird, but string making is one of my biggest hobbies. It's very, very therapeutic, making string out of different plant materials that you find along the way, and it always comes in useful. Trust me. And burdock is one of my favourite things to make string out of, because it gives up its fibres very, very readily. So yes, I shall be coming back here a little bit later on in the season and making a video for you guys about how to make your own natural cordage. And it's beautiful. There's nothing more satisfying than stringing up your runner beans in the height of summer using a little bit of cordage that you've made yourself that still smells faintly of burdock, and your hands smell like burdock too. It's a beautiful thing, trust me. So hiding in here we have another one of my favourite plants. So this is yarrow. So it's a member of the carrot family, the Apiaceae, and you might recognise it if you're a gardener because there are cultivated forms. Achillea, I think golden plate is one of them, beautiful umbel of yellow flowers. But this is the wild form, and it is quite easy to identify because it will grow from a rosette in the ground. It'll grow from a rosette in the ground, like you can see there, lots of leaves coming out of a single place. And it has these almost feathery leaves on it. And it will grow in grassland like this. You'll find it pretty much everywhere, actually. But it's a very useful plant. You can use it. You can use it as a food plant. I know there's a place in the Channel Islands that uses this in a gin. They make a yarrow gin, which is quite an interesting idea. And yes, it's a very interesting one to know from a healing point of view. You can make tinctures and balms, but the main use for it is if you get like a deep cut or whatever, you would chew this up. The enzymes in your saliva would sort of break down the chemicals in it, and it's antimicrobial, antifungal, and is aseptic, so it stops bleeding. So this would be packed into a wound like a poultice, and it would aid healing, especially with deep cuts and lacerations like you would get from swords or daggers or whatever like that. Now what else have we got? Aha! Here we go. Beautiful, beautiful plant, good to see. This is ground ivy. So it's not actually an ivy, it's a member of the mint family, the Lamiaceae, and like all members of the mint family, it has a square stem. So if you can see that, it's got ridges on it, and if you roll it between your thumb and forefinger, you can feel the ridges, and it's square. And it's good to see it now. It's in flower. It's got these beautiful mint flowers that grow in a whirl around the thing. It's called ground ivy because it has like a creeping habit like ivy, and it will cover sort of like forest floors and stuff like that. But you can find it in meadows here, and it has a beautiful aroma. Many people don't like it. I've heard it described in many different ways. But to me, it smells beautiful and aromatic and herbaceous. This is my go-to plant for making marinades and stuff for meat on a barbecue. It already has that sort of like steaky, that's it. It's sort of like a minted lamb chop after it's been cooked. And it's beautiful. Another name for it is ale hoof. This is because of its hoof-shaped leaves and the fact that it used to be made before the introduction of hops to this country to make beer with. And it is an interesting ingredient in beer if you rethink your idea of beer. This was used as a sort of aromatic flavouring on the top, like aromatic hops would be used now. So late on in the boil, maybe even at flame out, you'd throw them in and it would just give a lovely perfume to the ale. People reference that sort of beer to be called a Groot beer, but basically it was the way that beer and ale was made in many parts of Europe before the introduction of cultivated hops as a bittering agent. Also, beers were bittered with all sorts of stuff back in the day, loads of different bitter herbs, including stuff like ash bark. I've heard reference to ash bark being used because of its sort of bitter, astringent quality, because bitter things keep for longer. And that's the reason why we use hops in beer. Anyway, there's one more plant that I want to show you. And here it is. This, my friends, is crosswort. And this is a lovely sight to see. And it grows all the way along the cliff top here. So it reminds me of walking and the first days when summer started to pop its head through, and the excitement and stuff that used to bring with it. Now it is also called smooth bed straw. The name crosswort comes from these little cruciform flowers that have 4 petals on but grow in a whorl around the plant. It's quite hairy. And like most bed straws, it has these whorls of leaves that go all the way around the stem. This used to be classified as a gallium, like cleaver's gallium aperine, but I think this has been reclassified. It isn't a gallium. But yes, it is a beautiful plant nonetheless, and it is edible. Both the leaves and the flowers of this plant are edible. People say you can use them like spinach or put them in a salad, because they say that about absolutely every plant. If you hadn't noticed, in every single book. But if you eat it, it is really, really reminiscent of chicory. You know, the red chicory that you can get, the hearting chicory. It tastes almost exactly like that to me. So if you put the right dressing on this and put this in a salad, it will be a surprise, and people are going to absolutely love it. But yes, you can also put it in teas, which is very, very good for you. You can steep it, all sorts of good things. But for me, this makes me the happiest, because it means that summer is knocking on the door and is almost here. It is a beautiful afternoon. And in fact, I'm going to lay here in this meadow, which is possibly one of my favourite fields around near where I live. So many good memories of bringing a can of cider up here in my favourite book, and just spending an hour of a summer afternoon when I wasn't working. It's a fantastic place to be. I hope you found that information useful. If you did, click the thumbs up and hit subscribe for more foraging videos from this beautiful landscape. Until next week, take care.